Well, thanks everyone for coming out today. It's a beautiful day outside, so if you take time out of that beautiful weather to come inside, it's not an easy thing to do, so we certainly appreciate that. As Vaughn mentioned, I live and work in Toronto, so it was very gracious of Richard and Carol and the whole team here at Cooper Financial to invite me out to talk about a solution to the problems that Richard identified earlier. So what do we do at Integris? Well, we're a pension management company. We don't set up multi-billion-dollar pension plans. We set up individual pension plans, or what we call the personal pension plan. Some of you may have heard of the individual pension plan, or IPP. The personal pension plan that we offer at Integris is different. We're going to talk not a lot about that, but a little bit. But really what I want to focus on today is what can pension plans do for you? Why is it a solution to some of the problems that Richard identified in his presentation? I'm not going to sing. I'm not a very good singer. Only in the shower sometimes, but otherwise I'm not very good, so I won't torment you with that. So who is Integris Pension Management? As I said, we're a pension management firm. We don't manage money. We don't have products. We offer pension plans for small and medium-sized business owners and incorporated professionals. So your doctors, dentists, lawyers, accountants, like anyone, franchise owners, anyone who can incorporate, any business owner qualifies to have their own pension plan. That's what we offer. So let's look at the big picture. As Richard mentioned, the government's always looking for more tax revenue and ways to clamp down on perceived loopholes, strategies that perhaps our accountant would have recommended to you in the past are no longer, some of them are no longer available. They've taken them away, some still work. And then of course we've got generally the markets, right? So you've got your portfolio managers, and there's a speaker coming up after me that's going from Integris Pension Management, Integris Investment Management, that's going to talk about how they invest money for people. But there's always pressures in the marketplace for your portfolio, so we've got all those kind of pressures going on. And then you've got your businesses to run, right? You all have professional businesses that you run. So as again Richard mentioned, some of the changes in the Tax Act that was brought out in 2018, the TOSI rules and the TOPI rules, tax on split income and tax on passive income. He mentioned those. And so what is someone to do? What is a business owner to do? Well, for those of you who haven't heard of pension plans before and how they can be a solution, that's what we're going to talk about today. So what I want to stress is that the individual pension plan, or IPP, some of you may have heard of, has been around since 1991, 28 years. It's been available in the Tax Act. And the last statistics we saw was that there's 1.3 million Canadians who qualify to have one, the people I mentioned earlier. And there's only 13,000 that have ever been set up since 1991 in the whole country. And that's because most people haven't heard of it. And the ones who have heard of it, they're complex, as this graph shows. But they do offer a lot of benefits, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But let me just show you, what is a pension plan? Well, as we know, it's the same rules in these plans that apply to the multi-billion-dollar plans in Canada. Teachers, pension plan owners, hospital pension plans, it's the same rules. They're called the DB rules, or defined benefit. Same rules. We're not using anything new here. We haven't invented anything new in the sense of changing the rules of the Tax Act. We're just using the rules that have always been there for those multi-billion-dollar pension plans. Those gold-plated plans are available for teachers and civil servants, and we've brought those benefits down to the level of the small business owner or incorporated profession. That's all we've done. So the IPP I mentioned earlier, the individual pension plan, uses typically, in 95% of the cases, only the defined benefit rules. Okay? And I won't get into too much detail, but with our plan, we call it the personal pension plan, to differentiate from the IPP. The PPP has two other accounts to add more flexibility, more tax deductions, more tax deductible contributions that can go in beyond what an IPP can do. Right? So I won't go into too much detail about that, and just say if you can save more taxes and not less money going to the government, that's more money you're keeping in your pocket. It's typically a good thing. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what they are. So 98% of business owners and corporate professionals are using an RSP to save for retirement, or they're saving through their corporation. And as Richard mentioned, that's no longer a great strategy, because once you get over a certain threshold, you're going to pay a much higher level of tax on money you pull out of your corporation, or even on the passive income in your corporation, as he illustrated earlier. So the pension plan we're going to look at offers 8 new tax deductions, not new, 8 tax deductions that have been available for 28 years of the Tax Act that you can now take advantage of. So let's talk about that. And yet, as I mentioned, less than 2% of Canadians are taking advantage of it, right? So more money, so let's look at the two worlds. Let's look at either RSPs, or let's look at RSPs. You get 1 tax deduction, and you're limited. You can't put in more than 18% of your income to a maximum dollar amount, and that dollar amount changes every year. This year, the maximum is $26,500. But the pension plan has 8 advantages, 8 new tax deductions. The first is you can put in more each year than the RSP limit. It's not 18% for the pension plan. It's higher as you get older. So at every age, it's a little bit higher. So let's say you're 35 this year, you can put in $30,000, not $26,500. If you're a 60-year-old, you can put in $40,000 this year instead of $26,500. And it ends up capping it at age 64. So if you're 64 this year, or you have a client who's 64 this year, they can put in $18,000 more than the RSP limit. So almost $45,000 this year. So every year they can put in more. That's the first extra deduction, the first extra tax advantage. The next one, and here's an example of what that looks like. So I know this graph can be hard to read, but just bear with me. So at the bottom, from left to right, we've got age, from age 18 all the way across to age 64. And from bottom to top, vertically, we've got dollar amount. So as we just mentioned, the dark blue line going straight across at every age is the RSP limit, and it's the same for everybody at the same age. If you're at the highest income, it's 18% or $26,500 this year. But the green line is what we call the defined benefit or pension plan limits. And as you can see, once you're over the age of 40, you can put in more each year, as I mentioned. So a 45-year-old can put in 20%, not 18, and it keeps going up. Now, what's another deduction that's available? Well, the next extra deduction is, believe it or not, the government will allow you to go into a time machine and go back in time. So if you set your pension plan up this year, but you've had your business for 25 years, you can go back and all the years you had T4 income, that extra amount you could have contributed, you're allowed to total all that up and make a lump sum deduction or contribution, which is tax deductible to your company. So we have some clients that have had their business since 1991, and they set up their pension plan this year, or last year, and they're able to go back 28 years, and the deduction was as high as, the highest we've seen is $500,000 tax deduction. Instantly, the year they set up their pension plan. And they don't have to take that all in the first year. They can spread it up to 3 years. They want to do a little tax plan. They spread it over 3 years. And that's a brand new tax deduction for your company, for your business. If you are a doctor, you have an NPC, or a dentist, or an accountant, you know, it's available to you. So that's the first or second extra deduction. The third is what we call the double dip. One of the characteristics of pension plans is when you set one up, the government will issue what's called a pension adjustment on your notice of assessment, which will eliminate all your RSP room, except for $600 a year. You can still put in RSPs. So you can't have both. It's one or the other. Either a pension or you have RSP. But you don't care if you lose all your RSP room, because the pension, as we mentioned, you put in more every year than the RSP limit anyway. So you're better off. And, I didn't mention earlier, but I should mention, it's your company that's sponsoring the pension plan on your behalf. So it's the company making the contribution. So it's the company getting the deduction. But the money going in, the contribution that goes in, is not taxable for your person. It's not an income inclusion. You don't pay personal tax first. It goes straight in. Unlike an RSP. RSPs are after taxation, right? You get your company income, you pay yourself a salary, so So you pay corporate tax, personal tax, then you make an RSP contribution, and then you get a tax refund. Here it's a pre-tax solution, so it's better than the RSP, and you can put in more every year. But in the first year, sorry, just go back one. So when you set up a pension plan and go forward, no more RSPs are allowed, but again, you don't care because you're able to put in more, except for the first year. You get to do both. What we call a double dip. You get to do your RSP contribution and your pension contribution in the first year. So up to $54,000 the year you set up your pension plan instead of $26,500 for the RSP. Next deduction we have is called special payments. Here's another deduction. Part of the formula, because we are talking about pension formula here, it's the same, remember I mentioned it's the same federal pension rules or formula that's used for the multi-billion-dollar plans. One part of the formula that determines what your pension is going to pay you at retirement, the government has a rate of return that they expect all the money in the pension plan to grow every year. And that return is 7.5% every year, which is great, because we know the market goes up in a straight line every year at 7.5%, right? If only that were true. But as we know, markets fluctuate, right? And so what happens if the money in the plan isn't growing at 7.5%? What if it's growing by less? Let's say it's growing at 5% instead. Well, the difference, the 2.5% in that example, the 2.5% difference in all the money each year is an extra tax contribution that the company is obligated to top up the difference. So it always meets the 7.5% requirement, which is new contributions going in, beyond the limits for RSP, beyond even the pension limits. So you keep pushing the ceiling of how much you can tax shelter, and they're tax deductible. More deductions for your company. So that's another deduction. Here's one you might like. All the fees that you pay Integris Pension Management or whoever Cooper Financial invests your money with in the account, the fees are tax deductible. But all the money or all the investments you have in your RSP, all the fees you pay, those fees are not tax deductible in an RSP or TFSA. But in a pension plan, they are. It's a different section of the Tax Act that allows it. So here's a brand new annual tax deduction. It could be thousands of dollars every year that you never had before, because you're in a pension plan. So that's another one. What if you borrow money to make the contributions, whether it's the annual amount that's higher than the RSP? Remember we talked about the buyback, you can go back in time, it could be as high as $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in deduction. What if you borrow the money to put that money in the pension plan to make the contribution? Well, the interest on the loan is tax deductible. Whereas you know, if you borrow to make your RSP contribution, you can't deduct the interest on the loan. Here you can, with another deduction. What else? Here's a concept, another deduction called terminal funding. Probably most of you, by show of hands, anyone ever heard of this concept? This deduction called terminal funding? One person? Richard, not fair. You've been trained. You've had training on this. So terminal funding is a terrible term. It's very morbid, but it has nothing to do with death. It should be called early retirement fund, because that's what it is. The government, when you set up your pension plan, will allow you to pre-fund it early, so you can turn it on earlier than expected, instead of waiting until 65 or later. You can turn it on earlier. But obviously, if you started your pension early, it would be reduced, right? You can't have the same pension at 55 that you can have at 65. So terminal funding is an opportunity. The government says, we'll let you write a check if you have money in retained earnings, perhaps in your corporation, that normally, every dollar you pull out, you pay tax on. They allow you to write a check and deposit it to the pension plan. So you can turn it on earlier with an unreduced pension. So it's pre-funding your pension plan earlier. And that amount you write the check for is tax deductible to your corporation. So it's getting money out of your corporation without paying tax. And we talked about the buyback deduction being as high as $400,000 or $500,000. We've seen terminal funding deduction as high as $2 million for your corporation. Kind of nice. What else? Oh, we mentioned that this is the pension offset amount when you set up a pension rate. No more RSPs except for $600 a year, so you get that. It's a small amount. 1/3 of all the HST associated with anything, any fees you pay to the pension plan, so our fees, we charge annual fees. to set up your plan and monitor it and do the administration on an ongoing basis. We charge a fee for that. The investment management fees we talked about are tax deductibles, but there's always HST or GST on all of those fees. You can recover 1/3 of all those fees from the government. You fill out a one-page form, send it in, they send you a check back. That's an input tax credit. Here's a great one, most people don't realize, but I'll ask the quiz time, I'll ask a question. If you have RSPs and you've saved for many, many years in RSPs, and then you go to retire, one of the options is, or before age 71, you've got to, or by the age of 71 or earlier when you retire, you've got to do something with your RSP, right? So one option is you can convert it to a RIF, right? Retirement income fund. Can you income split that RIF income with a spouse that maybe doesn't have a lot of registered assets? Anybody know? Richard, don't. Richard, Carol knows. You can, right? You can income split your income with a spouse, but not until age 65. With a pension, you can start income splitting with a spouse, your pension income, as early as age 50. You have a 15-year advantage over the RSP rate, which means if your pension's $100,000 a year, instead of paying tax at the $100,000 level, you split with a spouse that maybe doesn't have a pension or doesn't have any other assets or little assets. Now you're both at the $50,000 tax rate each. So you're going to save about $8,000 a year in tax every year. And on top of that, there's another one. With a pension, the first $2,000 per person per year is the pension amount credit, which means you pay almost no tax on the first $2,000 each. So another $4,000 coming out of the pension is very, very likely, almost no tax. So that's a $12,000 annual savings on $100,000 income in one person. You save about $12,000 by splitting with two people. 15 years, up to 15 years earlier than an artist. Right? That adds up to hundreds of thousands of taxes. So you see, you've got all these extra deductions with a pension that you can't get with an RSP, and you certainly can't get by saving in your corporation. In fact, these deductions give you an opportunity to get money out of your corporation without paying tax into a tax shelter account. All the money in the pension goes like an RSP, tax shelter, tax deferred until you pull it out. And then it's taxed the same on an annual basis. But you can income split, which is nice. Years earlier. So here's an example. What does all this mean? What do all these tax savings mean? All these deductions mean? Well, we took an example of a 45-year-old today, been in business for 15 years, had their corporation for 15 years, had T4 income all those years. So that's the other requirement, right? Remember I mentioned to be eligible to have one, you have to have an incorporated company. So sole proprietorship doesn't work, partnership doesn't work. If you're a lawyer or a law firm, you have to change that, right? Then the other criteria is you have to have T4 income. Dividends do not qualify. They're not pensionable. The government won't allow you to use dividend income towards all these deductions and contributions. So you have to, if you're taking dividends only, or you've only ever taken dividends in the past, you know that past, we call the buyback, the past year's buyback for previous years, you wouldn't be eligible for any of it. Has to be T4 income. But if you switch going forward, now you're eligible to have a pension. So those are the two criteria. T4 income and incorporation. So let's say you had a company for 15 years, or you had your business, and you had $140,000 was your income in the past, and maybe going forward you reduce it, and you do $100,000 going forward. Well, in this example here, 20 years later, you're going to have over $1 million more in your pension plan. It's just math. Because you can put more in. And it's going to go tax shelter. So that's just one example. And that's typically what we see. We've done thousands of illustrations over the years, and the average extra wealth created in the pension over the RSP is between $800,000 and $1 million. Not including the tax deductions. That's just extra wealth you're able to accumulate. Plus all the deductions I talked about. So is it time for an upgrade? You don't have to set up a pension plan. You can stay in the RSP, or you can add $1 million in wealth for yourself, and just by setting up a pension plan. Some other advantages that's unique to our firm, because we're not the only ones who offer pension plans in Canada. There's actuaries that have been around 20, 25 years who offer IPPs. personal pension plan we offer has the 3 accounts instead of 1 with the IDP, so it's more flexible, more deductions can go in, more contribution room. It's available for younger people, right? The IPP individual pension plan, you'd never set one up for someone under the age of 40, right? Because the RSP limits would be higher, but with us, we have an account for that, for younger people, where they can always put in more than the RSP, and much more than the IPP. But the other thing we have is, you know, pension plans aren't simple animals. So one of the reasons people would set these up, in spite of all the wealth creation and deductions that are available, is they're complex. There aren't a lot of, I mean, you folks are busy. You're really good at what you do because you do it all day long. You don't have time to learn about pension rules and tax rules with regard to pension plans and understanding all that. That's what we do. We're the experts. We have pension lawyers at Integris. Our firm was founded by a pension lawyer. Spent 15 years on Bay Street in Toronto working at some of the largest law firms in Canada, specifically in the area of pension law. His clients were owners, teachers, hospital pension plans, hydro. That's what he worked with before he started Integris 6 years ago. So the actuaries out there that offer IPPs are not pension lawyers. So one advantage we have is we offer a fiduciary standard of care for our clients, which means when you set up a pension plan with us, we're on the hook, right? We take responsibility for your pension plan with the government because we're the experts. So you can rely on, and we're held to a legal standard to do what's in your best interest at all times, and make sure the plan's always in good standing with the regular, so you don't have to, so you can sleep at night. So we're held to a legal fiduciary standard of care, which is the highest level of care in Canada. And we offer something called a corporate trustee. Another advantage we offer over above the IPP, which you can get at other actuarial firms in Canada, it's less flexible and so on. But one of the rules the government has is you have to appoint 3 people to be trustees on your pension fund, like a little board of directors. And they have responsibilities. They got to sign documents, annual filings, and so on, paperwork. A, you don't want to be responsible to try to figure all that out. B, you probably don't want to burden 3 people to be trustees on your pension fund. Well, at Integris, we offer a solution for that. We have the only corporate trustee available in Canada where you don't have to burden 3 people. You appoint an institution, IA Trusting, the 4th largest insurance company in Canada. They're actually not just an insurance company, they're a financial conglomerate. And they offer to Integris only a corporate trust option. You don't have to burden 3 people for $300 a year, tax deductible. No one else in Canada can offer. We have a monopoly on that. And I mentioned the fiduciary oversight. So I'll leave you with one last strategy, and it may not apply to all of you in the room here. I'm not sure what all the occupations are. Some of you may be doctors, accountants, other business owners, and so on. But one of the really interesting things about pension plans is it's really great for family businesses. In fact, it's the largest. We talked about all the deductions I talked about, hundreds of thousands for buyback for previous years, and millions for terminal funding. This is larger. And what it is if you have a family business, so let's say you've got mom and dad, and they have a couple kids, and they all work in the family business and help out. Maybe the kids only work part-time when they're of age, and they're getting older. If mom and dad were to die early, in retirement, if they had an RSP, what happens? Does anybody know? If you got RSPs built up, now you're 65, let's say, you retire, turn it into a RIF, and you start collecting your income for retirement, what happens if you pass away? Anybody know? Fully taxable, right? Government will tax all of it. I don't have Richard's love, but oh, there it is. CRA will stick their bony hand in a cookie jar and pull out over 50%. Right? Never to be seen again. And your kids or beneficiaries are left with what's left over. Not with a pension. If, in the context of this family business, mom and dad had saved for 25, 30 years, instead of an RSPs and a pension plan, built up a couple $1 million with good investment advice from Integris, perhaps, or other financial institutions that Cooper Financial uses. Instead of $1 million going to the government, when the parents pass away in a family business, the money is kept inside the pension plan and is available for any remaining members of the plan that are still alive, which are the kids. No tax upon death, 0. It's like life, sorry Carol, it's about like life insurance without the premium. at least as far as pension money goes. And it gets better. So in that example, $1 million in tax is saved instantly, and it's going to continue to grow tax deferred until the kids retire. And if they like running the business and the business is doing well, they may not retire for 15, 20, 25 years down the road. What's that going to be worth? We're talking $4, $5, $6 million in wealth creation because you're not being taxed upon it. What would you pay for a plan like that? And that's probably comes to the crux of the other, is what do you pay for this thing? It's not free. RSPs are free, but you have $1 million or more or less in assets and wealth creation. Here you have millions more in wealth creation, but you have to pay for it. And that's you know, so you got to, I guess the question you have to ask yourself, is it worth the fees that we charge? And that's why, again, it's because we're fiduciaries. We always do an analysis up front first. We do a comparison. We say, if you continue to save in RSPs, here's how much you'll have in retirement. If you save in a pension plan with all the extra deductions, here's how much you'll have. And if you're not any better off, don't do it. But we always do that because we're fiduciaries. We have to make sure it's the right fit for you. So we always do analysis up front. We don't charge for it. And for those of you who would like something like that done, talk to Richard. He's got the one-page form that you would fill out, and we run that through our calculator. We use, you know, government formula calculators to do the calculations. We come back to you and say, here's the extra value for you. You're going to have an extra $1 million at retirement over the RSP after our fees. And oh, by the way, an extra $2 million in tax deductions along the way for your business, for your company. And you don't have to do it if you want to, but it's available. So I think that's all. I mean, I just had some slides that talk about the intergenerational thing, but that's it there. I think that's all I have.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's really. So there you go. So do we charge fees? Yeah, but the extra deductions you get pays for the solution many, many, many times over. And as I mentioned, we're not a product. We're an account type, right? All these deductions I talked about, as I said, have been in the tax act for 28 years. Just very few people know that. And the reason is it's not taught anymore. Even your advisors or accountants may have not mentioned it to you. It's not their fault. It's not covered in the CPA course. It's not covered in the CA course. Even your financial advisors, like at Cooper Financial, these are smart people. It's not covered in the CFP course or the CIM course at the Integris Pension. It's not covered. They don't talk about it. So rely on the experts. Integris Pension Management was founded by pension lawyers. We know the Tax Act inside out when it comes to pension rules. We can do an analysis for you to see if it makes sense for you. If it does, great. We disclose our fees at every step of the way. And if it makes sense for you, great. We'd be happy to talk to you about that. You can contact us through Richard at Cooper Financial. Thanks for your time.